What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to be breaking down some very important information about tomorrow because tomorrow Tesla has its earnings report, and this is going to be very important for the share price and other factors like that. I'm also going to be talking about what the news is saying with the markets in Tesla and what economic data is coming out for tomorrow, and all of these things could affect Tesla's share price moving forward. But before I break anything down all this information, before I talk about what's going on with earnings and what the expectations are, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Weeble link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. Now, this offer ends in just about 2 weeks from now, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with Tesla. We closed up 0.37% for the day. We have this bullish divergence that developed on Tesla, leading to one bounce from here. But Tesla needs to try to break this 50 EMA to try to turn a little bit more bullish. And even though we have this imbalance right here that could push Tesla a little bit higher, I just want to mention that I wouldn't necessarily turn way too bullish or way too bearish because, yes, Tesla could try to pop one more time approaching earnings, but then everything could change after that. And it's very important to be very cautious of this and very careful because earnings could cause a very, very big move in either direction. Now, there's also going to be an IV crush. Implied volatility is crazy high for Tesla as premiums are very expensive. So, it's very important to be like really prepared for an IP crush that could affect options and just play based off that or just be very careful with these moves. But the question is, what's going to happen to the markets going forward and what's going to happen to Tesla? Let me just very briefly talk about the market before I talk about Tesla. As a reminder, okay, we have some building permits data in the morning tomorrow. Then we have many Fed speakers from about noon Eastern time until about 4 p.m. And lastly, we have the 20-year bond auction coming out. So we have about four different Fed speakers afternoon. We have Waller, Williams, Page, and Harker all giving speeches, and then we have the bond auction for the 20-year report coming out. So that's going to be very interesting. We could see some volatility thanks to that. But just as a reminder, all of this is in preparation for Thursday because we have Jerome Powell giving a speech at noon for Thursday. I will talk more about that later on. Now, that's pretty much it for economic data. There's not a whole lot going on. But what's going to be bigger for the markets will be their earnings. We have ASML in the morning. We have Morgan Stanley and a bunch of other banks. That's going to cause the markets either gap up or gap down, in my opinion, possibly to the upside, but we'll just have to wait and see. And then after that, the market's going to see a big reaction after close when we have Tesla and Netflix earnings. Tesla is going to be the biggest one for tomorrow, so make sure you're prepared for this and make sure you're ready. For Tesla's earnings, we're expecting a 76 cent per share EPS. We're expecting Tesla to do relatively well for it in terms of EPS in a way where it's like still profitable. But revenue is expected to be around 24 billion. However, it's not just EPS and revenue that's super, super important. What's going to be even more important will be Tesla's expectations, their guidance, and also the other factors out there that affect the company. The estimate for the bottom line, however, implies a decline of 30% according to Zacks. So we're expecting some declines. We're expecting to see Tesla not report the strongest reports. So expectations are kind of low for this earnings. And we're going to be watching to see what Tesla says about the recession that could be coming very, very soon. Now it's going to affect their sales and etc. We're also going to be watching to see other factors such as deliveries, how deliveries are looking, what's going to happen with guidance, are there going to be more planned factory shutdowns, so many answers like that. Operating margins is going to be very, very important because Tesla announced many, many price cuts. If you look at their inventories, they were trying to reduce them, so that was very important for them. And we started to see changes like this during Q3 that put pressure on their gross margins as well. So operating margins and gross margins could be looking at some big declines. We're expecting a gross profit decline of about 26.4%, and that's going to be very important for Tesla. We will see how this affects them. So we're seeing some very weak expectations for Tesla. We'll see what happens moving forward thanks to that. And then we're also seeing headlines coming out saying that basically looking at Q3 earnings, we're going to be looking for lower sales, possibly falling margins and other things like that, according to many analysts. Now, nobody truly knows for sure, and Tesla is a company that tends to surprise investors. We'll have to wait and see because it is true that their margins could be a lot weaker after all the slashes that were just made. So we'll wait and see. This is going to be very important for the markets. Piper Sandler came out, they gave Tesla an overweight rating, so did Wedbush. They're still bullish on the Tesla nonetheless. The price price ratio is kind of flat as Tesla's performing equally with the markets. And I think none of this data really matters as much for tomorrow specifically because it's a very special day. So we'll have to wait and see what changes. Tesla's volume was 93.5 million almost, so not too bad whatsoever. And we will see what happens moving forward. Now, as far as Tesla goes, I would say that if we're bearish tomorrow, you want to see Tesla break below 250 and hold all the way down there. If that's the case, we could be watching for a retest of 247. And if that fails, it's going to come all the way down to 244. If we're bullish tomorrow, you're going to be watching Tesla break 257. If we break it, watch for a test of 260. And if that ends up like holding, then we could see Tesla just react to that as we have some tight resistance right there. What is the most likely possibility? Whether we gap up or gap down could depend on earnings. It depends on Morgan Stanley's earnings and those other earnings in the morning. But my gut tells me Tesla's going to make an attempt to either pop. If we gap down too hard, it's going to be a small pop towards 257 and a rejection. If we manage to open very close to where we are, we could see Tesla pop towards 260. It's a possibility because of this imbalance right here on the 4-hour time frame. It looks like it's trying to head for 260. And I would say that it may touch 260, then reject and come back down and then just trade very sideways, very choppy approaching tomorrow if we do get that pop. So watch for a possibility. As long as Tesla opens close to where we are, there is potential for it to continue this uptrend and try to push up for a 260, then reject, and then start coming back down like this slowly and just trade basically just sideways for the rest of the day going into Thursday, going into earnings, but still close very flat. So I think that that's the most likely possibility, a move like this, as we have this accumulation, a double bottom like formation, and then we also have this imbalance acting as a magnet towards 260, so long as there's no bad news. So look for a little pop, then a drop in sideways price action for tomorrow, but then we're going to be watching to see how earnings affects Tesla. I'm expecting a very big move. I can't really predict it this time around, guys. I don't know what's going to happen. It could be a big surprise. So, in my opinion, the best thing to do is just be very patient, and we're going to be very, very ready for that. Now, as far as SPY goes, I just want to call out that SPY right over here has a very, very interesting trend. So I know this looks kind of complicated. Let me just simplify this. We've been stuck between supply and demand. Basically, we have our demand zone down here where this red rectangle happens to be down here. We have this this is our demand zone down here. Sorry about that, guys, between 432 and 433. And we have our supply zone around 437.5 to 438.5. So basically, if we gap up tomorrow, depending on earnings, and we push up, watch resistance very close to 438 around that zone. If we reject from here, we could see this come right back down, right? That's going to be very important because we are seeing the sellers stepping in right here. If we gap down tomorrow, depending on Morgan Stanley's earnings and such, watch it come down. But if we do end up hitting this lower level between 432 and 433, buyers could step in and push us right back up to 435 for a very flat close. It all depends on how we open, so I can't really predict this perfectly, but these are going to be the most likely move, either a pop up and a drop if we gap up, or a kind of like a gap down and drop and then a pop. To turn really bullish or really bearish, we have to break out of these zones, but so far we've been stuck between them, going back and forth and back and forth. So we'll just wait and see, but that's the most likely possibility. I would say that we either like kind of gap up and drop, or we kind of drop and then pop, and kind of close very flat for tomorrow. I would say the same thing is very probable for the QQQ, as we're looking very flat. If we break and hold 368, there's potential for us to test 370, but we're seeing some tight resistance during rejections. If we break below 366, watch for a retest of 364, then a bounce. We're basically stuck in this range. We've been stuck here for quite some time. So I believe that it all depends on how we gap up or gap down. So watch those levels very carefully. For Nvda, I just wanted to call out that Nvda is looking a bit more bearish. We have this megaphone pattern that's acting as a channel, and you could argue that we have a head and shoulders that's going to lead to more downside. So look for a little backtest of 442. If we fail to hold 442 to 444, I expect Nvidia to sink towards 430 all over again. And if that breaks, 425 is on the table. If we hold above 440, we could see Nvidia try to hold up at the same time. So we're going to be watching these levels very, very carefully on Nvidia. As of right now, it's kind of looking more bearish, so I do favor the downside. Same thing with Aapl. We have a head and shoulders like pattern. There could be a little pop coming like this to retest 178, which is where we have this imbalance and also this supply zone. But then we could reject and come right back down towards 176.5. If that fails us, watch the support right here, very close to 175. That's where we could be heading for Aapl. So if we break below 176.5, watch 175. If we break above 177.5, watch this push towards 178. I think a pop and drop is most likely what's going to happen tomorrow, but it depends on earnings and other factors, which I can't truly predict all the time. But I just wanted to at least call it out and make this as simple and understandable as possible. Anyways, I went over Tesla's main technicals. It does look a little bit more bullish on the 4 hour time from just a bit more in favor of that. So we're going to be watching these levels carefully. And then last but not least, I'm just going to quickly go over just a couple of other technicals just to make this video even more interesting and more simple for anyone out there. So IWM has this inverse head and shoulders. We could get one little pop tomorrow with the market towards this 177 area, then a rejection, and for it to come back down to 175. That's the most likely case in my opinion. Microsoft is looking a little weaker. It has tried to pop towards 336 in the not the pre-market, the after hours, but it might reject and come back down towards 330 in my opinion. So I do think the rejection is coming to it. Looking at this current structure as we just hit a supply zone, AMD is looking a bit more bearish as well, as we could see this thing sink towards 104. If that fails, let's watch it come down towards 102.5. If we end up seeing if you look at the dollar, we have a potential not a bullish divergence. Sorry about that, guys. We have let me just double check the structure. I think we had an inverse head and shoulders on. Let me just double check. Sorry, guys. We have an inverse head and shoulders. I got kind of lost for a second. We have an inverse head and shoulders on the dollar. If we hold this low at 106 and we start pushing upwards, that's going to be bearish for the market. So there's a risk of downside. It could drop a little bit more than bounce. So if the inverse head and shoulders holds, the dollar could start uptrending soon, which could slow the markets down over time. That's why I'm saying the market may pop and then drop, but there is a risk of some downside as time goes on. For Coinbase, I'm going to be looking for a pop towards 79, then a rejection for it to come back down towards 75. For Google, we're going to be looking for a little pop. It has this imbalance, has a potential inverse head and shoulders like structure, but I mean, I could see this thing try to push up towards like 142, then reject and come back down. So I could see a little bit more upside before a rejection. The 10-year treasury yield is a bit more bullish, which is typically like a bearish signal for the markets. It could reject off resistance right here around 48.5, find a bottom and try bouncing. So very important to watch that. As far as Amazon goes, we're going to be watching this very sideways price action right here, but it's looking a bit more bearish on the 4 hour time frame. So I think Amazon's going to pop, hit 131.7, then reject and sink towards 130.19 for more downside. And then finally, as for Meta, I think that Meta is going to likely try to fight this resistance right here at 325. I think it's going to try to pop a little above it, but it might fail and come back down towards 320. My gut tells me there's going to be a little pop and drop on Meta, and I think this is going to make its way throughout the market. So that's what I'm saying. It all depends on earnings, of course, for a little pop and drop. Now, as far as Tesla goes, I went over the bullish and bearish cases, and I mentioned that what tends to happen before earnings is we kind of like pop, then drop. So we could see a little pop on Tesla, and then it may start selling off as time goes on and start trading sideways. But then don't forget that this is just a very minor move relative to earnings. Earnings are going to cause a very, very big surge in volatility. So we will see what happens with Tesla. And we just have to be ready and be prepared for anything based off the current trend. All right. So watch the levels I called out, guys. Do what you have to do. And I'll see you guys in the next video. I really hope this short video was very, like helpful for all the people out there who are interested in it. And we will see what happens to Tesla. Now, I am a little bit apprehensive going into earnings. I know that Tesla, it does beat typically, but this time around, the margins are not looking the strongest. So we'll just wait and see what happens tomorrow, and I'll just provide you guys with important warnings and important updates on technicals, and we will see what happens. I mean, it's just a matter of time. I'm very optimistic for the long term, but for the short term, we don't know what's going to happen with these earnings. So just be patient, guys. We will see what happens, and we just have to be as calm-headed as possible going into this report. All right. Thank you once again. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you guys very soon, and peace out.